Recognize for 5 minutes Mr. Rivera from Miami.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you to all of you for being here today. I want to focus in a little bit on this issue of the Keystone pipeline, because from everything that I've read, everything I've seen, and for a lot of what I've heard, this seems to me to be a no-brainer. From what I've seen here, this would increase the supply of safe, secure, and reliable oil from Canada, a friendly neighbor. I think we would all agree on that point. Spur $15 to $20 billion in new private sector investment in the United States economy. Create somewhere between 15 and 20,000 high-quality jobs during the pipeline's construction phase. Generate $6.5 billion in new personal income for U.S. workers and their families. Stimulate more than $585 million in new state and local taxes in states along the pipeline route. $5.2 billion in property taxes over the lifespan of the pipeline. From $100 to $600 million in economic impact to the Gulf Coast and the Midwest. Now, we've seen particularly the economic strain that has gone on in the Gulf Coast, particularly recently. The economic strain our entire nation is undergoing, the situation with job creation in this country and infrastructure and personal income, unemployment. So I wonder, why is it that anyone would try to hesitate or place obstacles or in any way try to impede this pipeline, which would immediately help increase the domestic oil supply, which is a key goal announced by President Obama just recently? What am I missing in terms of why this administration or others would try to impede development? I'll go with Mr. Goldwood, Mr. Pugliese.
Thank you, Congressman. First, I think it's important to note that from the Congress requires that for a cross-border pipeline, that the Department of State assess the environmental impacts of that and open it for public comment, take those comments, evaluate them, and then issue a final environmental impact statement. So this is the process which the Congress has required, and that's what the State Department is going through right now. Subsequent to that assessment, they make a national interest determination about whether, considering environmental and other concerns, whether this has been done appropriately. They went through this process with the Alberta Clipper Pipeline and others, and it's always the subject of controversy. It's always the subject of litigation. And so the Department is being, I think, extremely careful to make sure that everyone has an opportunity to be heard and that new issues that were raised in the environmental impact process are fairly considered and now described and disclosed to the public so they have an opportunity to comment. So it's not obstructionism. It is an abundance of caution. And I would say that we have learned important things in the draft EIS process. One was there were comments on ways to improve the safety of the pipeline. And those comments were taken, and the design of the pipeline was changed. The other is the Department of Energy commissioned a study because they believed that these environmental impacts of the pipeline would not take place if we didn't permit this pipeline. So therefore, we would be at fault. It would be our responsibility that if we would only not permit this pipeline, then perhaps these emissions would not take place. And they commissioned an extremely thorough study by NSIS. But the result that that study came to is that the environmental impacts of oil sands production will take place whether or not we permit this pipeline. And while it's intuitively obvious, it's now been validated. And that's because Canada will produce this oil whether we take it by pipeline or not. It will move by rail. It will move by truck.
Mr. Gold, I only have a minute left of my time, and I want to respect the time for my colleagues up here on the dais. Mr. Pugliese, would you like to weigh in as well?
I do think we often present ourselves. I think we often present ourselves with a false choice. We think, well, if we would just have electric cars, we wouldn't need this Canadian oil. But there's no study that suggests we will not be importing oil. So at the margin, we can address the true energy security problem, which is concentration of low-cost reserves in unstable parts of the world. And to the extent that we can proliferate supplies outside those unstable places, like Canada, we get direct benefits. Other producers will be unable to extract as high rents from us. because there will be more supply, and the world will be less subject to volatility. We need to proliferate supplies from safe parts of the world, and this is a great strategy to do it. And finally, I'd like to say is that although we saw those pictures of the open mining, the Canadians are moving to an in situ process, which is much less disturbing of the surface of the earth.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would suspect we should be expediting this process rather than putting any impediments, but I yield back.